I'm shifting around place. I'm reading all the stuff. Hi, very much stuff. Where are you staying now?
Hare Krishna devotees, good morning from Sridhar Mayapur. My name is Madhavananda Das, and this is our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. Narayanam namaskrityam naram shaivanarottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat vedi ramayanesh chaiva purane vadate tata adavante cha madhye cha hari sarvatra giyate mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurum Vinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Pajunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Ve Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Mote Udara Radha Dava Mote Udara Radha Dava Mote Udara Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is our 13th session on texts 11 to 12. Of chapter 29 of Canto 3. So spoken by Lord Kapila Dev to his mother, Devahuti. And looking at things this morning, I think we're going to have at least one more session, maybe two or even three on these verses. There's some very, very important, very relevant topics which are coming. So I'll read the verse. Madguna Shruti Matrena Moyi Sarva Guhasaye Manogatira Vichina Yata Gangam Vasombudo Lakshanam Bhakti Yogasya Nirgunasya Hudaritam Ohoicha Vyavahitaya Bhakti Purushottame. The manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganga flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Lord. And Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, the basic principle of this unadulterated, pure devotional service is love of Godhead. Madguna Shruti Matrena means, quote, just after hearing about the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, end quote. These qualities are called nirguna. The Supreme Lord is uncontaminated by the modes of material nature, therefore he is attractive to the pure devotee. There is no need to practice meditation to attain such attraction. The pure devotee is already in the transcendental stage, and the affinity between him and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is natural and is compared to the water of the Ganga flowing toward the sea. The flow of the Ganga cannot be stopped by any condition. Similarly, a pure devotee's attraction for the transcendental name, form, and pastimes of the Supreme Godhead cannot be stopped by any material condition. The word avicina, quote, without interruptions, end of quote, is very important in this connection. No material condition can stop the flow of the devotional service of a pure devotee. Gora draganya gana gotra goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyada Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Panchakopa Dharubhishchan Kripa Sindhu Devachan Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnadevi Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. Good morning, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. Although for some of you, like Lynn, who's watching right now, it's evening. I guess it's because you're standing upside down on the other side of the world compared to us. So we want to speak a little something today. We wrote a little something this morning about it. At this point in our journey of exploring Suddha Bhakti, pure devotion, a very relevant question arises: where do I fit into all this? In our last few sessions, we discussed the one-pointed focus of the vraja-gopīs and Radha as the topmost examples of Suddha Bhakti. That sounds nice, but what relevance in this topic can a humble, conditioned soul like myself find? That's our question today, and I think it's going to take us at least this session, another probably 2 more to discuss this point. And although this verse is speaking about Suddha Bhakti, and someone may say, well, the topic you're approaching now is not within the discussion. It is. And let's first of all understand how that is. Let's read another different translation, which also is correct in Sanskrit, for this verse. The definition of transcendental bhakti yoga is thus illustrated. It is the unbroken tendency of the mind, Kapila says, to be drawn to me, whose abode is the heart of hearts of everyone. Simply by hearing about my qualities, just like the water and the Ganga is drawn to the ocean. So the phrase, manogatir vichina, means that it continuously, vichina attracts the heart and mind of Krishna. And Krishna is described by Kapila in this verse as Sarva Guhasaye. He's literally the meaning, Sarva means all, Guha means the heart, Asaye means the shelter. He's literally the heart of the hearts of everyone. And he's the shelter of the hearts of everyone. So if we have an understanding in these discussions up to now that, okay, this is nice theory, but it's really not appropriate for me, then that would imply something which I would find very unpalatable. We would have to then say that, well, maybe Krishna's not really the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's not really relevant to everyone, because that's the nature of God. So in this discussion, it's very important that we should understand where is the hope. Through the last few weeks, we've been discussing about bhakti, which is done in the mode of ignorance, which is really ugly and terrible. Bhakti in the mode of passion, which is also pretty ugly and terrible. Bhakti in the mode of goodness, which is okay, but is kind of religious and formal. And now we're speaking about Suddha Bhakti. And gee whiz, where do I fit into all of this? So let's look back a little bit on our journey we've gone through. We spoke a lot about ruchi, about faith, about guru nishta. We quoted a verse which I want to come back to in another day or two, hopefully, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which describes that Diksha Kali Bhakta Kori Atma Samarpana. At the time of initiation, Krishna himself says, we're not saying it, Krishna says it, that devotee becomes as good as me. And there's a lot of other pramanas about the glory of receiving initiation. In other words, that devotee's body is completely spiritualized. And as we discussed, and we're looking back a little now, as we discussed before, that means that you directly come to the point of ruchi. And you just jump right over anartha nivriti, which most of us are struggling with and crying, and oh, I have so many material desires, I have this and that and the other. And we spoke something about that, why it is that because we don't have a proper quality of faith, and because we don't have the proper quality of faith, we've not been able to surrender properly, and therefore we haven't gotten ruchi. So I'm not going to review all of these things. There's so many topics we've been speaking about. I'd like to try to come to our topic today, which again is what relevance does all this have for me? If we can't speak about what relevance something has for all of us, my humble opinion as a person who's been instructed by my Guru Maharaj to speak, he once told me, if someone asks you, you have no choice, you must. But my humble feeling is, over the years, is that I don't feel it's legal. I don't feel it's authorized, it's not bona fide to speak about something if I don't see the relevance for who I'm speaking it to. Then it just becomes theoretical. And in the long run, it just becomes that thing which gosh, I think 60 or 70% of the Americans became atheists over. They really don't like mechanical organized religion. It becomes that, what Srila Prabhupada would sometimes call churchianity. We're just doing something just because, gee whiz, that's what I'm doing. So, in this regard, our Guru Maharaj used to often say that your only qualification is your disqualification. That's the only qualification that we have. To put it in another way, our only qualification is our honesty, because this is the nature of bhakti. Religion may be very pretentious, and there may be many different priests who are doing so many different things secretly, and that's another long discussion we don't want to go into, a very depressing discussion, and even Vaishnavas also. In fact, I would hazard to say practically all of us have such things in our hearts. We're all, if someone wanted to be very strict, we would all be considered to be hypocrites. And the proof is that we don't have Krishna praying, and we're not in the spiritual world. We don't directly see Krishna. If your bhakti is pure and you're not a hypocrite, it means you're going to see that. So then, what is the hope? Will we just become very discouraged, and maybe we should just become a hedonist or something? Sounds a lot more fun than following four regulated principles and running around and just being a bogus person. There's a very important role of honesty and lamentation. And these two have a connection together. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the postgraduate study of the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita itself, the foundation of that book, is chapter 1, which Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan has titled viṣāda-yoga. And we sometimes give seminars on that. Viṣāda-yoga literally means the yoga of lamentation, or to translate yoga, yoga means to connect with the Lord, to be able to connect with God through lamentation. And I'd like to discuss that some today, and maybe in our next session or two. And how that's all predicated upon, it's all based upon our honesty. And the word viṣāda, in fact, is an interesting word. Viṣāda means lamentation. But viṣāda is a compound word. It's a combination of two words, bish and ad. Bish is a common word we also have in Bengali and Oriya. Bish means poison. And ada means to accept. So when you have the word viṣāda, which means to accept poison, it means lamentation. That's a kind of lamentation when we accept that poison. And what is the poison? It's the poison of looking at myself in the mirror. And in this regard, there are different types of lamentation. Sometimes people, they take a very cursory look at this topic and they say, oh, you shouldn't lament, you shouldn't feel bad, we should be positive, and everything is okay. And that's a fact. And we also want to explore that topic within the realm of bhakti. But there's a problem with that. When someone is a wife beater, when someone is a thief, when someone's hurt people very badly, and there's a lot of people, unfortunately, in the world today who fall in that category, many times we see such persons, they take to alcohol or to drugs, or just they become psychotic simply because they can't look at themselves. They can't deal with the nasty person that they are. And so they live in some illusion, either through drink or intoxication, or through just some psychosis, that they're actually not such a bad person. This other person, they really deserved it, and this and this. And they can't make any advancement. So that kind of lamentation, or that honesty for someone like that is very, very difficult. There's a kind of lamentation where we become paralyzed. And Krishna describes this in the Bhagavad Gita, or rather, it's described in the first chapter by, not Arjuna, by, who spoke the first? Sanjay, thank you. Simple thing. It's such a simple thing, nobody gave, why don't you remember that? You said Sanjay, they said Arjuna. Maybe whispered. So Sanjaya describes the position of Arjuna. Actually, this is a verse I'm very attached to. I remember one year going out for book distribution during our marathon in Los Angeles, and our Sankirtan leader, Janika Rishi Prabhu at that time, had told us that if you have a hard time, you should phone me, and I'll preach to you, I'll put you together. And so I was really having a hard time. One day I was really just completely mental, and it just seemed terrible, like everybody was against me, and everybody hated me, and I'm doing everything wrong. And so I phoned him, and he read this verse to me from the first chapter. Text story. So it's a little bit of this verse, I feel something. And he said, this is the words of Arjuna to Krishna. Nacha shaknom avastatum brahmataiva cha me mana nimitani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. Arjuna told Krishna, this is after now, first thing he did, he told Krishna, Sena yorubayor madhya, hey, chariot driver, cello, move the chariot, you're the driver, move the chariot in between both armies, because I want to see who is the enemy. It's a very interesting point. Some of our acharyas have pointed out that who is the enemy, because Krishna gestures to both sides. Here's the enemy. Not just the Kauravas, but also the Pandavas. How are the Pandavas in my family my enemy? Well, they're the enemy in the sense that the real enemy is our bodily conception of life. And when Arjuna looks and sees on the other side of the battlefield, his cousin brother, Duryodhana, and he sees his friends like Ashvatthama, he sees his own teacher, Dronacharya, his guru, he sees his grandfather, Bhishma Dev, then he can't deal with it. And he speaks this verse, he says, I can't stand here any longer. Vastatum. I can't stay here any longer. Brahmativa chamemana. I'm forgetting myself. My mind is just reeling. And nimitani chapashyami viparitani kesh. All I see is causes of misfortune. So this is a type of mundane lamentation. Now, at the outset, we should point out that Arjuna's not actually experiencing this. But just as is a logic of the branch in the tree, that sometimes the mother tells the child, do you see the moon? And the child says, no. And then the mother points out the tree. So do you see the tree? Yes, I see the tree. Do you see that branch that's pointing out to the right? Yes, I see the branch. Well, look at the edge of the branch. Oh, I see the moon. So her purpose is not to point out the tree or the branch. Her purpose is to point out the moon. So similarly, to teach us, Arjuna is acting like a conditioned soul. And this verse very beautifully describes the mentality of mundane lamentation. Nachakshapnam avashtatum. I can't stay here any longer. Brahmataiva chamem. I'm forgetting myself. My mind's reeling. Nimitani chapashanya. All I see is negative things everywhere. And such people, what is their last resource? They take to suicide, which also is what Arjuna does. And we'll speak about that this morning. So I like to read Srila Prabhupada's purport. I remember when my friend Janaka Rishi read this to me, it was just like, wow, like I felt like Krishna and Prabhupada were directly speaking to me. I can't stay here any longer. I can't do this. I was feeling, I'm forgetting myself. I'm not thinking of myself as a spirit soul. My mind is reeling. All I see are causes of misfortune. Prabhupada writes in his purport, listen, due to his impatience, Arjuna was unable to stay in the battlefield, and he was forgetting himself on account of this weakness of his mind. Excessive attachment for material things puts a man in such a bewildering condition of existence. Bhayam vitya binivesita shat. Bhagavatam 11.237, which we'd like to speak about in a few days also. Such fearfulness and loss of mental equilibrium take place in persons who are too affected by material conditions. Arjuna envisioned only painful reverses in the battlefield. He would not be happy even by gaining victory over the foe. Even if he's victorious, he thinks, what's the value of it? The words nimitani viparitani are significant when a man sees only frustration in his expectations. This is mundane lamentation. When we only see frustration in our expectations. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in one place, he says an interesting thing. Where is the suffering in Grihastha ashram? I mean, give me a break. Where is the inherent suffering? Just to be married to someone else means that you're going to suffer? There is no inherent suffering in Grihastha ashram. It's ridiculous. And there's no diaper changing, no washing dishes, no cooking, no changing nappies, whatever, which is going to cause me that, inherently going to cause me that suffering. The suffering comes, he says, from false expectations. That says it all. He's going to treat me like a princess and buy me chocolates and it's going to be romantic. And he thinks, and she's just going to clean and cook and do whatever I tell her, and she'll never have any desire of her own. And it doesn't turn out to be like that. So Prabhupada says, when a man sees only frustration in his expectations, then he thinks, why am I here? Why am I here in this marriage? Why am I here out in this place distributing books or something? Prabhupada goes on. Everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the Supreme Self. Arjuna is showing ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. One's real self-interest lies in Vishnu or Krishna. The conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers material pains. Arjuna thought that his victory in the battle would only be a cause of lamentation for him. So this is text number 30. Then in text 45, there's 46 verses in this first chapter. In text 45, then Arjuna just comes to the point saying, okay, forget it. Understand his lamentation before I comment on this. His lamentation is that he identifies with his body, and part of his identification is based on other persons. This is my guru. This is my cousin brother. This is my grandfather. These are called upadis in Sanskrit, or designations, and they help to give us our identity. Our identity is an amalgamation, combination of so many different persons that we identify with. I am the son or daughter of such and such. I am an American. I am a Russian. I am a Hare Krishna devotee. I am an ISKCON devotee. You're a Gaudiya Math devotee. I don't like you. You're a Russian. I don't like you because I'm American. And my identity is based on so many other external persons. So Arjuna, really, he's suffering this identity crisis. And it's bringing him to the point where he can't stay here any longer. He's forgetting himself. And so then he comes to the point, the ultimate point of this existential crisis, the way that it's dealt with materially is through suicide. And someone takes their life. And this is described in text 45. A lot of people skip over this first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I love it. I eat it up. It's just such a practical, wonderful chapter. It's the foundation of the entire book, as we'll discuss today. So in text 45, Arjuna, he tells Krishna, Yadimam apitikaram ashastram shastrapanaya dhartarashtra ranehan yustam me kshimataram bhavet. I don't want to live. He says, better if the enemy, the sons of Dhritarashtra, they all come and they just kill me, unarmed and unresisting. And then the last verse in this chapter, Sanjaya says, he speaks about what Arjuna does. Evam upvarjuna sanke ratopashta upavisat visrija sasaram chapam soka samvigna manasa. Prabhupada translates this. Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Today we call this death by cop. I actually have a friend in Los Angeles, a few of us have a mutual friend, who a year or two ago, he was becoming very depressed, and he went to the local police station and he started running toward the police, and he had his hand in his pocket as though he had a gun. And the police, it's very difficult for them in Los Angeles. They said, hey, take your hands out of your pocket. What do you have there? And he wouldn't do it. And the police pulled their gun and said, take your hands out of your, and he wouldn't do it. And they just shot and killed him. We call it death by cop, if someone wants to commit suicide in that way. So this is Arjuna on the battle of Kurukshetra, death by cop. I'm going to be killed by the other side. I'm not going to fight. Of course, again, he's just showing us, but he's showing us this mundane lamentation. Now, this lamentation that Arjuna is expressing has some hope, because he's taking shelter of Krishna. And that's the fundamental difference between self-pity, where someone wallows in unhappiness and feels so sorry for themselves, and the final end of that road is they just want to kill themselves. It's the difference between that self-pity and bhakti, when we take shelter of Krishna. In the first verse of the next chapter, Sanjaya describes the basis of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Why did Krishna speak to Arjuna? And Sanjaya says, Vishidantam idam vakyam uvacha madhusudana. Because of the viṣāda, or the lamentation of Arjuna, that he expressed to Krishna. Then, Vishidantam idam vakyam, these words that Krishna spoke in the viṣāda-yoga section, the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And then, uvacha madhusudana, Krishna began to speak the Bhagavad Gita. This is our hope. This is what our Guru Maharaj would say, that your only qualification is your disqualification. Or as Rupa Goswami puts it in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, a verse which is quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya chapter 1, by Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, when they meet with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they speak this verse. Maktuyo nasti papata naparari chakaschana parihare pilajjame kim bruvi parushottama. There's tuya means that something like, or to measure something. Matuyo nasti, there's no one papatma, no sinful soul like me. Naparadi, no offender like myself. I'm so bad that bilajjame, I don't even feel ashamed. This is the situation of a conditioned soul. And this is viṣāda-yoga. It's okay. We have to have some platform. If Krishna is actually the soul of our souls, if he's actually sarva-guhasaye, the heart of the hearts of everyone, if he's actually Bhagavan, then there has to be some place for me also. There has to be some alternative for someone who's just a sinful, fallen rascal like myself. Otherwise, how can I be inspired by this process? How can we approach this process? There's no hope for me. So this viṣāda, this lamentation, is very, very important. This honesty. Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha, we're going to explore some comments that he makes in an elaborate way about this topic. He speaks about what he calls kaitava and akaitava bhakti. Kaitava bhakti means cheating bhakti. And I think a lot of us have seen that. We're practicing bhakti. I'm such a great person. I'm this, I'm that, I'm the best book distributor, I'm the most handsome, I'm definitely the most humble person. We want to be the most of this and that and the other. And we don't deal with reality. And that so-called bhakti, Jiva Goswami says, is akaitava. It's kaitava bhakti, excuse me. Kaitava, it's cheating, because you're not being honest with me. In any relationship, whether it's between a boy and a girl, whether it's between two friends, whether it's between a teacher and a student, between politicians and voters, trust has to be there. Honesty has to be there. That's why nobody likes politicians, because they've cheated so much. And that's why so many girls don't like their boyfriends either, because they also cheated on them. Because when there's cheating and there's duplicity, it destroys a relationship. So if we want to practice Suddha Bhakti, which is being described in these two verses, we have to come to the point of akaitava bhakti, which means we become honest. Or as our Guru Maharaj would say, your only qualification is your disqualification. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami is given a verse which was originally composed by Srila Sanatana Goswami, which describes firm hope, asabandha, as characteristic of someone who's a jatta rati bhakta, or someone who's devoted to bhajan. This person is described in the Bhagavad Gita, apichet sudarachara, bhajate mama nanyabha, sadareva samantavya samyaki vyasitarasa. He's a durachari sadhu. He's a sadhu. Krishna says very emphatically that you should understand he's a sadhu, but he's a durachari. He's engaged in bad activities. Well, then how in the world is he a sadhu? Because he's practicing ananyata bhajan. Or, as Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami describes, he's a jatta rati bhakta. He's a devotee who's devoted to bhajan. And his faith is there. But as we discussed in some previous classes, and we may touch on this verse again from the 11th canto, that the verse is not coming to my mind, that someone may have faith, jata shravana katasu, nivina karasarva karmasu, vedadukatmakam kama paritigo panishvara. They may have faith in Krishna Kata, but they still can't give up their sense gratification. So, I don't know about everybody else, but that's me. And therefore, Sanatana Goswami gives us this verse, which gives us asa bandha. Asa means hope. Bandha means to some connection or something firm, firm hope. Na prema shavanari bhaktirapi vayogo tava vaishnavo Gyanam va subhakarma va kiyadaho satsjatirapyastiva hinartadika sadaki tvayi tatapya chedhyamula sati he gopi janavalabha vyatayate ha ha madasayamam.
Here's what I found.
Go away, my phone's talking about. Okay. Here's what I found. This is what I found. Na prema. I don't have any love of God. This is what he's saying. Na prema. Shravanadi. I don't have any attachment to hearing and chanting. Bhakti. I have no bhakti. I'm not a yogi. I'm not a Vaishnava. Jnana. I don't have any knowledge. You may say, well, at least I've been reading Bhagavad Gita and I know. I don't have any knowledge. Believe me, I don't have any knowledge. I've met Gopal Ghosh. I've met fucking Mohammed. I've met my groomers. I've met a few people in my life who really have knowledge. I don't have any knowledge. Vasubha karma, I don't have any pious activities. Kiyadaho, not even a little tiny bit. Such jatir, I didn't take birth in a good family. I can't say that either. I was born in America and I did all the terrible things you can imagine. It's an honest, it's an honest admittance to this thing. Hinardadika sadake. But he says, hey Krishna, hey Gopi Janabalaba, oh dear friend of the gopis, Vyatayate, I have so much pain in my heart, but still I have this hope, this asha. And what is my hope? Hinardadika sadake. That you, Krishna, you're the heart of everyone's heart. And you're there for everyone, even fallen persons like myself. You're there for people who are hina artha, who are fallen. They don't have anything. Adika sadike. They don't have any good qualifications. They're taking shelter of you, and you are very, very kind and merciful to that person. That's the only hope that I have. So this is Tanadapi Samachena. This is real humility. But it's not humility, it's reality. If we can't deal with reality in our relationships, there's no hope to reform ourselves. Someone may be someone, as we mentioned previously, who beats their wife, beats their children. They may be a very ugly person. Still, we can find it in our hearts, even non-devotees, I find generally, can find it in their hearts to forgive such a person, if that person can deal with their situation, if they can come clean, if they can be honest and admit, I've done all these bad things. This is my situation. But when we live in a fantasy, and so many abusers in this world, and in one sense we're all abusers because we're trying to exploit other people subtly or grossly for our own pleasure, our own sense gratification. The nature of abusers, as Srila Prabhupada said in his purport we're reading in the Bhagavad Gita, is that Prabhupada says, everyone is interested in himself, his own welfare. No one is interested in the Supreme Self. So we have no clue about the pain we're causing other people. We have no clue. We're living in a fantasy. And such people, they think they're so big, they think they're so powerful. This is the nature of abusers. You can't really be an abuser unless you have a false attitude toward yourself. Unless you think I'm bigger, I'm better than these other persons, and I deserve their respect. I deserve them worshiping me, and I deserve to be able to enjoy them. I deserve to lord it over them and be able to abuse them because I'm better than them. So this is fantasy. This is not living in reality. So the beginning of bhakti is this viṣāda-yoga, taking this poison of lamentation, taking the poison of reality. And this is the beginning of our bhakti. Therefore, our only qualification is our disqualification. So we'll stop there. It's a little sobering topic this morning. Everybody? Okay, we wanted to speak the truth. So if anybody has any reflections and tell us what you're walking away with today, we'd like to hear that. Anybody here in the room with us? Sachitananda Prabhu? I think I didn't plug in our mic. Someone told me it wasn't working. I changed the battery. So I sincerely hope it's working now. We'll see. Do you have any reflections on Sachitananda Prabhu? Speak loudly.
Thank you. Yes, your qualification is your disqualification. That's a very good statement. And I was thinking about to ask question, but then you mentioned it based on the verse of Srila Rupa Goswami about the hope that he has only that, hey, you can go to Yanavalava, because you are the savior of the most fallen. That hope is burning in my heart and it causes pain. So now the question is that sometimes many people join, and after maybe 5 years, 10 years, even 15 years, or maybe 20, they say, this is not for me, actually. I tried. I'm going to be honest now. I'm going to be honest. I'm not hypocritical anymore. And they're even there to say, you guys are hypocritical because we work together there, and I see that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So then they say, I'd rather just be now truthful, and I'm going to go there, and in that way, like I'm clean of not being hypocritical, of not being, how do you say, like cheating, because actually they see there's a lot of things they cannot do, and they see there's no hope. Can you explain that?
Thank you. If we go on putting on a show for so many years, like so many of us have been doing, we put on a good show. As Gour once said in one class here in Mayapur, Are Baba, how long can we go on pretending before what's inside comes on the outside? After a certain point, it becomes a little depressing. Even though we may get so much people speaking so many nice things, even people are saying, oh, Guruji, and addressing you in such a nice way. But we look inside ourselves and we feel so bad. I'm just such a great hypocrite. But still, if I have faith in bhajan, I'll continue. But if I go on pretending, and along with that, I make offenses, and then we begin with offenses to the holy name, and then those are not so bad. But with those offenses escalate to the point where I'm offending devotees, then the result of that will be that I'll lose my taste, I'll lose my faith in bhajan. And then I'll think that I'll have this idea, Atmavan Manyate Jagat, I have no taste, I have no happiness. Nobody else does either. It doesn't work because it doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for anybody else. I was a hypocrite. Everybody else must be a hypocrite also. We were speaking this the other day. Some years ago in Los Angeles, there was one very senior devotee, very, very senior devotee, once told me something very unpleasant. He said, Madhavananda, he said, none of the sannyasis chant 16 rounds. They're all bogus. He said, I know. I used to be a sannyasi, and I wasn't chanting 16 rounds. So I know all of them are bogus. And when I heard that, it really hurt my heart. And I had to say something a little impudent because he was a very senior person. But I told him, I said, please forgive me, but I know at least one bona fide person. He said in kind of a sneering way, yeah, who? And I said, you. And he literally took 2 steps back. He thought it would be some kind of devotional judo or something. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, if you're so advanced, you're on such a high platform that you can see there's nobody bona fide, then you must be bona fide. I find that very encouraging. At least one person is bona fide. That's our attitude. Right? If it doesn't work for me, Prabhupada called it sour grapes. The fox can't jump up to get the grapes, and he says, oh, it's sour. And he just takes it for granted that they're bad. So there's a very, very serious thing. We should always have faith in bhakti. And that faith in bhakti, as we'll discuss later, we want to go to the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. I see Omkar is asking some question, which I think we're going to come to in another session or two. But what if I'm really, really attached to all kinds of sense gratification and things, and how do I progress in bhakti? Krishna discusses that with Uddhava in the 11th canto, in the verse just before this Bhayam Vidya Binivesita Shat verse, which Prabhupada quoted in his Gita purport, which we just spoke on. So we'll come to that point, which gives us a more elaborate answer to this question. There's something for everyone. But in our stage, it's very, very, very important that we have this jeta ruchi, that we have some one-pointed fixation in bhakti, that we have faith in bhakti. We should be jeta rati bhakti, devotees who have this faith in bhajan. And then no matter what, I'm not going to give it up. Lynn has commented, she says it's very sobering, but I think that absolute transparency, first with ourselves and then with our Guru, takes phenomenal strength and courage. I'm still so prone to hide and guard my fallacies and downfalls for fear that exposing them makes me seen as weak. Thank you for this vital reminder that it is the opposite. Opening up to our truth is our great strength. You're a really good writer, man. I really appreciate it. You put your thoughts in a very clear way. It's a very, very nice comment. This bhakti begins with absolute transparency, because this is a relationship. It's a divine relationship. All relationships have to be transparent. If we go, our wife says, "Where have you been all day?" Well, kind of went out with the boys. And what's that lipstick on your face? Oh, that's just a scratch. It was on my face. And we're obviously lying about something. If there's no transparency there, then that relationship will break. It can't go on. Śuddha-bhakti Misha says, thank you very much. Mama Thakur, thank you. Is that okay, Sachitanaka? A lot more can be said and will be said. I'd like to explore this topic. Anapani Radha is jumping up and down. There she is. Speak loud. I don't know if the mic's working or not.
Thank you so much for this important topic, to understand how relevant it is for us, and especially about this first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I heard that verse where I read it many times, where Arjuna he's Prabhu, he's speaking something about kind of suicide, but I didn't think about that in this connection, and it's made the first chapter even more relative for so many people in this world who came to the point of this decision to commit suicide, because it's not possible to tolerate this anymore. So it's really interesting. And also you told about abusers, that actually everybody who is on this bodily platform is an abuser. And also it reminds me how my Guru Maharaj told that actually there is nothing to enjoy in this world, but actually the one thing, to consider ourselves better than others. And there are so many ways to do this. And it's also connected with abuser keys. To do some violence, we have to consider ourselves better than others. And this is what I'm doing every time. It's maybe not so grossly, but suddenly, but it's really sober thing. But it's nice that we have this Asha Bandha, great hope, although I have all these bad things. And I'm an abuser, I'm attached to so many things, but Krishna is so merciful, and he's in the heart of everybody. And if we have a drop of sincerity, he can hear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I say something to that?
Yeah.
I just, it doesn't necessarily imply physical suicide, but isn't it that more spiritual suicide instead of somebody might take it like physical suicide that is not?
When Anapani was speaking, it was reminding me, the nature when you live in a big group of people, there's always some controversy because not everybody agrees on everything. I gave a talk some years ago in someone's home, it wasn't even in a temple, it was advertised later on Facebook, a great place to quarrel. And the title of the lecture was Suicide in the Bhagavad Gita. and there was one senior devotee whose job, it's a job of all of our seniors to protect our movement, to protect the teachings of Prabhupada. And they had that desire, and they really started chastising me. They didn't listen to the lecture. My point of the lecture was that the Gita is all about suicide. It begins with Arjuna literally wanting to die, death by cop, in front of everybody. And then it goes on to Sarva Dharman Parityagya, which is also suicide. Give up everything, give up your life. That's suicide. Give up everything and surrender to me. But that's positive suicide. Suicide's a very fascinating thing. As many philosophers and artists over the years have been very fascinated with the concept that I can take my own life, I can take away my own existence. Can I do that? How do I do that? It's a very fascinating thing. And the Bhagavad Gita is based on that. It's based on, if you want to progress, you have to commit material suicide. You have to give up all your material hopes. You have to become hopeless. I've tried, it didn't work with that girl, but this other girl, maybe it'll work with her. It didn't work there either. And then 6 times, 8 times later, you've suffered so much, you've been embarrassed and beaten up by your brothers and parents and so many things, but still, you see another pretty girl and you think, oh, this one might be different. We have hope, and that's what keeps our material life going. So we have to become hopeless. And that means suicide, because this material hope is all there is in this world, but it's useless. So just a quick point here, Onkar was asking if we could elaborate on how after Diksha we can jump to Ruchi if we do complete surrender. Well, this is what's spoken by Krishna. This is the meaning of this verse, Diksha Kali Bhakta Kori Atma Samarpana, that if you become Atma Samarpana and you surrender completely at the time of initiation, then your body becomes non-different from Krishna's. And that means that there's no material desires. That means that there's no anarthas, there's no problems, both subtly and grossly. That's a quick answer, but we'd like to speak more on that a little later. Krishna Kun, do you have some reflection? Yes, Krishna Kun. Speak loud at the mic. Doesn't work.
I love this, that Krishna is the heart of everyone's heart. It's just so beautiful. I wanted to ask something in connection with a statement that you made, which is a beautiful statement and very, very real. That's that without complete honesty, with zero trace of duplicity, there's no hope to mend any relationship. And that includes, basically we said this, maybe I rephrased it a little bit, but basically this is what you said, right? So that includes our relationship with Krishna, our relationship with our Gurudev and Vaishnavas. So...
Mic's not working. Speak loud.
My question is...
Thank you, Lynn.
Very often we forget that in Vaishnava terms, duplicity has a different meaning than in material terms. Because duplicity can mean any kind of material desire that we may have, which means that we want something other than just solely and wholly please Guru and Krishna. And sometimes when we are not so mature in devotional service yet, we are accused of being liars or be accused of being duplicitous, and we genuinely believe that it's not true. But in actuality, we are liars and duplicitous persons. And I'm wondering if you can make some helpful comment how to deal with this. Or maybe somebody does actually say that we are liars and we know that we didn't lie according to our best knowledge.
Okay, several topics, several points. We should embrace that, and we should be honest in that I'm a liar, I'm a cheater, I'm a pretentious person.
But it's about a particular complete thing and we didn't do that, then it's very difficult.
Well, we don't have to confess for things we didn't do. No. Yes, see, Lavata, she's coming, she can hardly hear you. You got to speak really loud, it's okay. It's okay. Well, I was just thinking that even in a relationship, someone may say, I'm not trying to exploit my wife or my husband. Well, let me ask you a question. Why did you buy those cats? Why do you have cats? I don't want to exploit my cats. They're not there for my pleasure. Well, then why do you have them? Because you're just so concerned about all living. Why just cats? Why not dogs and donkeys and elephants and cockroaches and every other living entity? Why don't you pet them and be kind to all of them also? Why, if you ask a person, why did you get the cats? And I'm not against cats, it's okay. Well, why did you get those cats? I say, well, I needed some peace of mind. I needed some affection. I needed some company. Well, all three of those statements mean it's for me. And that's also why someone gets married. That's why we have friendship, because this person is going to scratch my back. They're going to do something for me. All of our mundane relationships, and all the way up to our relationship with Guru and Krishna, there's some subtle motivation there as long as we consider ourselves to be our body. There's going to be some subtle motivation there. And our discussion we want to progress to, which will not continue on Wednesday. Our next session on Wednesday is going to be about Srimati Radharani, that's Radhastami. But our next session on this topic will be on Friday. But we'd like to discuss, well then, really, it's not so easy. How can I progress? Is that okay, Krishna Kun?
What if somebody accuses us?
I don't think they're going to hear me saying really conclusion. Sorry.
Just leave.
All right. Okay, anything else? Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So we'll be back on Wednesday with some Radha Katha for the appearance day of Srimati Radharani. Many thanks to all the devotees. I'm sorry, our microphone looks like it's broken. We need to get a new one. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda Ki Jai, Vancha Kalpadavibhishcha.